Shaun Miller here with Beneath the Surface, and if you don't know, it's where we bring in local business owners and nonprofits and things like that to kind of dig in a little bit and learn more about what they're doing, and they're all local people. So local is a great thing, and today we have a very special guest, Bruce Sullivan with Pure Air Solutions. He offers a great product, a great service, and thank you for what you do. There's so many people that contact us that have a need for what he's doing and vice versa. And so we kind of can work in tandem if the need arises. And so Bruce, we're glad to have you. And I'm going to come right out of the gate and ask you, so how did you get started in the mold remediation business?
Wow. So about 2018, our family was having a lot of issues with some chronic illnesses and things. We lived in my wife's great-grandfather's farmhouse, an 100-year-old house that we thought was fine. But there are a lot of things that had been done wrong with it initially and since we moved in, et cetera. Turns out we had a massive mold issue. Gutters are put on wrong, things like this, water getting on the, water getting on the house. And so basically we moved out of the house for 7 months while every wall, floor, ceiling, piece of siding, HVAC, ductwork, windows were all replaced, all furniture and appliances thrown out, and 5 sick kids.
Wow.
And so since that time, mold has been something like a family obsession. I think we talk about it more than any other topic. And 11 months after moving back into our house, having discarded all the furniture and the appliances and everything, my wife showed me a video of a doctor interviewing a man named Mike Adams, an inventor who invented a process called pure maintenance dry fogging for mold remediation. And my wife said, "Here, watch this video. Look what we missed out on." I watched the video for about 30 minutes, got done. I said, "We got to do this. This is going to help people." She wasn't expecting that. And for the next 2 months, we agonized, prayed, researched, tried to see if this was for real, because it seemed too good to be true what he was saying. And we found a report from the Army Corps of Engineers at Fort Campbell, right here in our neck of the woods, where they had put this process to the test because the Army has a lot of moldy buildings, old moldy buildings.
Right.
And they tested out this process, gave it a thumbs up. I've got a 34-page report from the Corps of Engineers. And so we basically had Mike fly in from Utah to treat our church has a 130-year-old building,
right,
with 130-year-old building problems that made my family sick every time we went into it. Mike came in, treated the building. 30 minutes later, after he was done treating it, the family went in, no issues. I said, "Sign me up." And I've done over 200 homes in the Bowling Green area since with this patented process. And so we got into this because of a family need. And because we have seen what mold does to people's health. I still have sons and daughters in the process of recovering several years later.
Wow. So it's a great process. I've seen it in action. They're shutting off different rooms, they're using foggers and whatnot. But what I want to touch on before we move into that is that different people have different sensitivities to different kinds of mold. So How many kinds of mold is there? Like 1,000, 1,000,000?
Thousands of different species of mold, though quite often you might encounter, the dirty dozen or so, a few more common molds, in homes. And some of the bad boys are Stachybotrys, which is what people call toxic black mold,
right,
Chytomium, Aspergillus, Penicillium, Cladosporium, various mold types. And you're correct. The different molds put out different toxins. Those different toxins affect different people differently. Depending who you read, approximately 20 to 25% of the population exhibits greater mold sensitivity than the rest of the population. It doesn't mean that the other 75 to 80% of the people, mold doesn't hurt them.
Right.
It just means they're not quite as sensitized. And the reason is, it seems to be that their genetics are such that they don't clear the toxins from their bodies well as other people. So the toxins build up. They tend to be people who are also chemically sensitive in other ways sometimes, but they basically are not clearing the toxins. And when you get sick from mold, what it is, it's a form of toxicity. And you're being poisoned.
Right.
And like all toxicities, it depends on what the toxin is, the length of exposure, the intensity of the exposure, and your own personal physiology. And and when people think of mold related illnesses, oftentimes they think only of sinuses and respiratory. That's just the tip of the iceberg.
Right.
Mold toxins can inflame and impact every system of the body, joints, etc. Lots of mental things, chronic fatigue, insomnia, brain fog, anxieties, panic attacks. We joke in my family about mold rage, just getting irritable. So a lot of mental things. And so mold's been linked to a lot of stuff like that. And again, different people affected differently. It's not uncommon for me to get a phone call from a woman, for example, who is a homemaker. She's in her house all the time. Her husband's not in the house all the time. They have different genetics. She's sick, chronically ill. He's fine. He begins to think she's a hypochondriac.
Right.
And when I start talking to her over the phone and sharing some of the symptoms of mold-related illnesses, I've had women start crying, saying, "You mean I'm not crazy?" No, you're not crazy.
Right.
You're sick.
Right.
You're being poisoned.
So what he's talking about is the exposure you have, stack effect, and we'll dig in there. But if you spend a lot of time indoors, and a lot of people do, more so indoors than outdoors, especially maybe this time of year when it's hot outside, or vice versa when it's cold outside. And so the exposure to these toxins, and I think about the word fatigue that he mentioned. You might wake up in the morning and you don't feel rested, even though you slept for 6.5 hours or so. So that could be mold. We don't know. The great thing I think about Bruce and myself is we don't prey on your fears talking about mold. We just want to bring the facts to the surface. And if we can assist you and help you, we are serving from a service mentality, not from a profit mentality. So I think that's a great thing. It's unheard of in the industry today. We're not dollar driven, we're results driven, and we want to impact and help your quality of life. And so that's how we cross paths. He's kind of above the floor and up, and I'm below the floor in the crawl spaces with encapsulations. There's a huge movement, it seems to me, whether this is basements or crawl spaces, but quality air. People are more concerned, and they don't realize how big of a deal that is. But it's pretty nasty under some of these houses. It's pretty nasty in the walls of some of these older houses, and I guess maybe they didn't have the science back then that they do now, and they don't have the information possibly, and maybe some people did, and now we can get the word out. So that's what we're doing today is if you're affected by mold or even think that you are, if somebody has a problem, what do? They contact you, and
Yeah.
what happens next?
Well, then what we do, we have a consultation. I spend a lot of time just talking to people on the phone, trying, asking them questions, just try to help them figure out what's going on in their house. Because the process I do, yes, I can turn a house into like a hospital operating room environment. The dry fogging process with peracetic acid will sterilize and detoxify everything. But we don't want to do that until we've identified, one, if you have a mold issue, and two, why do you have it?
Right.
Because if we don't address why you have it, if your crawl space is damp or wet, and we don't fix that, well, it's going to come back.
Right.
If your humidity is not under control in your house, it's going to come back. And you're talking about, what we're touching on there, old houses and quality of air, et cetera. This is such a common problem these days. I think it's more common than it used to be, if for no other reason, the way we're building our homes.
Right.
I mentioned I live in my wife's great-grandfather's house, 100-year-old house.
Right.
Originally had no electricity, no indoor plumbing, had big porches all around it with big windows, et cetera. So that even in the summertime, even, if it was getting a little humid and some mildew growing in parts of the house, at least the windows were open.
Right.
And so you had air movement in the house.
Right.
Now we're all obsessed with energy efficiency. We
Right.
close up that house, make it airtight. We build it with drywall, which has cardboard, and mold just loves that. So next thing you know, if we're not controlling a modern house's indoor environment, specifically humidity and moisture, the way that it needs to be controlled, it goes sideways fast, and your indoor air environment becomes far worse than the outdoor. It's like you're living in a plastic bag, and all the toxins are building up.
So true story. If we do some real estate apartments, and you're trying so hard to make these units efficient, but it can actually turn around and cause problems. So the myth, new homes have just as many problems as old homes. And a lot of people think that it has to be an old farmhouse or it has to be this antique situation. It does not. There's new homes being created. The lumber is green, and then they have these cross spaces, and it just kind of depends. There's several factors that contribute to these things. And, they might have a high water table. The house might be built a little low. We don't know. Maybe there's different approaches that different builders have. But anyway, new homes have mold too. when we talk about mold, most people think black mold, the nickname black mold, and they think about that. And so there's so many different kinds of mold. I tell my staff here, you're not allowed to say the word black mold until we run a test. So if you ever find somebody that's crossing that path, it needs to be identified. So, and the goal is not to scare you, just to educate you and address the concerns that are with it. But there's just so many different types of mold.
And I find the term black mold to be next to meaningless because several species of mold can be black. Some molds can be different colors under different conditions, the same species under different conditions, different growth stages, etc. And so that word's tossed around a lot,
Right.
As if somehow if it's not black, it's not harmful. That's
Right.
baloney.
That's baloney.
And so that's just become a cultural thing that's tossed around. You mentioned, for example, new home issues. I've treated several new homes that people have moved into their homes within 2-3 months have a mold issue.
Right.
One of the things I've seen behind that is there's a lot of homes being built in Bowling Green. They're actually being built with crawl space encapsulation in mind. In other words, they don't have it, and I'd like to talk more about that, after this, but they'll have, no foundation vents. Okay, so they're being designed to be encapsulated from the get-go. But then where it goes sideways, they incorporate a very bad idea. Instead of putting a crawl space dehumidifier into that crawl space, they will just put some holes, if you will, in the HVAC trunk line and attempt to condition the crawl space with the same HVAC system of the living space above it,
yes,
effectively making those two environments one air envelope, and it's always cooler under the house. I've been in homes like that I see mold growing in them in the crawl space, and you're sucking it all into the house. And so it's a simple fix. You plug up those holes and put a crawl space dehumidifier in there,
which is what we do.
Yeah.
And so he's exactly right. So from experience and over the years, we've learned you never connect the crawl space system to the living quarters. They remain separate. It's a huge debate. HVAC people think that they're right. There's a lot of people know, but we do these systems and we guarantee these warranties and to make sure that this works what we're doing. And so the word encapsulation has become like a catch-all for all these different systems. You're seeing people that are spraying foam now and they put black plastic down and then they vent the HVAC and they call that an encapsulation. So, and it's not. An encapsulation needs to be a separate system. And he's very true. The reason being, in the most part, is you can almost never control that mold situation, and if it escalates, you have a huge problem on your hand, and then you're going to have to use a guy like Bruce to eradicate it because it's gone everywhere. It's gone upstairs, downstairs, attics, bathroom, behind the walls, under the carpet, everything. So I'm glad you brought that up because it's a huge debate.
And what you mentioned here is, and I have a HVAC guy I consult with a lot, and he's explained that if you do the math all just right, et cetera, you might be able to get away doing with the HVAC system, but it's just not worth the risk. I've seen too many times where it's gone sideways. And what I've seen also, you mentioned about then once you have a problem, it spreads throughout the whole house. A lot of folks do not appreciate the tremendous impact of the crawl space on the entire living space above you. And one way I illustrate it is this. If there was a skunk in your crawl space, do you think you would know it in the house? Anyone who's had skunks on their farm knows good and well,
That's
yes, you will
exactly
know
right.
it in the house.
Yeah.
And the same way that those odors move up into the living space, it will move into your house through everything from all the plumbing and wiring penetrations, HVAC ductwork, which is never perfectly sealed,
Right.
the natural stack effect of the air going out the attic vents, creating a little bit of a draw, just like a chimney flue.
Right.
And so air in your crawl space does get into your house. And so a moldy crawl space means a moldy house.
Yes, very good points. When I first met Bruce, we were talking, we're firing all on the same cylinders, and it all makes so much sense. But yes, it's just unbelievable how important that is. And I'm seeing this whole industry come in where they're trying to straighten out the air quality and so on and so forth. So the principle is that ducting your encapsulation system with your HVAC unit, number one, it makes it harder on your HVAC unit. So you got to go up a half ton or another ton. Another thing is you cannot separate the moisture, which is the goal. You've got to eliminate the humidity and the moisture. Those two things have to be controlled before you can control mold. We can't take the food source out. So 3 things we need to make mold grow is the organic food source, humidity, and moisture. And so all these things can be controlled except for the organic food source. So my point is, if you can't separate the moisture, a air system or dehumidifier can actually take the moisture out of the air, and it does so with heat, and then the air passes over and it separates these two, and so that's why you get condensation unit with the dehumidifier, because it's getting rid of the moisture. The heat that comes off this unit also helps dry and maintain a consistent temperature in your crawl space. So Bruce, do you feel like that an encapsulation helps make your side of treating the mold in the home better, effective, more effective?
I guess the best way I know how to answer that is I did it to my house. I had my house encapsulated. In fact, you've been under my house.
Right.
And so when this is happening. And so basically, where we live in the Southeast, what happens is, I put together a little PDF on crawl space tips on this, because what we have in the Southeast in the summertime, you've got warm, humid air migrating under the crawl space through the passive vents. If you have a typical house, with just passive ventilation, that air stalls out. It cools off because the crawl space is cooler than the outside air in the summertime. Condensation occurs, and you can have a crawl space that's not even necessarily, quote, wet. The ground may not be wet, but the humidity will be 85, 95% under there, and mold will be growing. And so for 6 months out of the year, that crawl space is a mold growing environment. You go back in the wintertime, now you've got cold air moving into a warmer crawl space. The humidity drops and it dries up. The mold goes dormant and waits until the springtime, when it comes back up again, the humidity, and it starts growing, because mold, it won't die during that wintertime. They'll just go dormant. And so I see this all the time. That's why I go under I've been in brand spanking new houses that have black plastic down, but passive vents. And in the summertime, you see the puddles of water underneath the HVAC trunk line from condensation. In the wintertime, if I go back, you'll just see little white mineral deposits left in the plastic, because it all dried up and evaporated.
Sure.
Every 6 months, going back and forth.
That's right.
And where we live, the only way I know how to do this is encapsulation, where you're sealing everything off, putting in a good crawl space dehumidifier. But I'll also say this on crawl space encapsulation: I've seen some pretty sorry knockoff jobs. If a guy comes out to your house and says, "I want to encapsulate it," and he shoots you some bargain price, and you've got, like, say, a 1,500 square foot crawl space, and he says, "Yeah, I'll do it for $7,000. So thank him and send him on his way.
Right.
Because he doesn't know what he's doing. He's going to do a sorry job. That's just my experience.
So he's exactly right. I think he was shocked when I first met him. 1 out of 5 jobs that this company does is redoing the work that somebody else did that's not up to snuff, or still have the mold problem, still have the same thing going on. So that's incredible. I mean, paying for something twice, you're better off making a phone call to the expert the first time. And so Bruce has been exposed to this. I guess he kind of tries to do his due diligence to make sure he's not referring somebody that's not going to get the job done, So thank you for sharing that, because that's a big deal.
Oh, what happens is the guys who do what I call the knockoff inferior jobs, a lot of times it's things like they don't deal with the moisture issue in the first place. If there's outside issues, drainage issues, gutter issues, or many times a good encapsulation job is going to entail putting drain tile around the inside perimeter before you put down the plastic, leads to a sump pump. A lot of guys will skip that. Just put down the plastic, put some foam, say the job's done.
So they're not doing the rim and band board. You'll have leaks there. The CMUs or the piers in the crawl space, they'll be hollow. So that's going to be like a chimney. You have to seal that stuff off. The most common thing I think I see is that if you're trying to cut corners, and we use an undersized machine. So we're not going to cover this in this podcast today, but the way these things are rated, it's a big deal, because this thing has a performance curve. And if you don't have a big enough machine to begin with, you are absolutely shooting yourself in the foot. And we've seen it happen. Drainage matting, we still do a lot of things to make sure that it gets done right. And you can't really cut corners, folks. It's just not an option out there. Or then you got to have a guy treating for mold through your whole house because you have an epidemic on your hands. So,
and if you have a good encapsulation job, and you pay for that, you've actually not only helped fix your problem, controlling that, making that crawl space into a controllable environment, you've improved the value of your home. And if you have a beautifully encapsulated crawl space, and you're trying to sell your house, and your realtor does not recognize how to use that as a selling point, find another realtor.
I
It's
agree.
called value-added selling.
It says, hey, my wife is one of these people. She takes care of her home. I'm telling you, if we have a nick in the wall, she has the painter there. She got the drywall person there. And the same is true in her crawl space. It is one of the prettiest crawl spaces you've ever seen. It's been done. It's been about 7 years now. We opened up the doors going there today. It's still just as pretty as the day that we did it. I mean, it's phenomenal.
Can entertain guests.
So, yeah. Yeah. I want to tell a story, Bruce, here when I did some due diligence on him, because I didn't know who I was talking to when I first met Bruce. And this is about 3 years ago, I think. But a phenomenal video on his website is Pure Air Solutions, KY.com. He tells a story about how his family was affected, and it really opened my eyes because I'm probably fitting to that 75% where I'm not as affected by most molds. But I will say that if I get in a crawl space and I see yellow mold, I feel very fatigued the next day. I have just noticed that. And I learned that from another inspector in the past because it's not real common, but when I am sensitive to the yellow mold. And so I saw most recently, I saw on cardboard that was sitting in a crawl space, that stuff needs to be removed. You need to take it out. There's, I guess back in the day, there was a lot of, hey, just throw it in the crawl space and we'll just cover it up kind of thing. So, but, so let's dig in with Bruce just a little bit more because I want to make sure we cover this information. So your approach is it's called the Pure Maintenance Approach. Tell us a little more about that. Okay. And so
typically, conventional mold remediation generally involves, tearing out, cleaning what you can see, spraying. For example, if you had a plumbing leak in your bathroom,
right?
You'd call in a typical mold remediator. They plastic off the room to contain it, tear out the walls, whatever. The mold they see, they'd spray with chemicals, clean, poison, paint over, etc. Then when they rebuild everything back up, they'll then run an air scrubber in that compartment for 24 hours or so before they take the plastic down. And then they'll take an air sample. And unsurprisingly, the air sample won't show any spores because they've been running this air scrubber for 24 hours. And they'll say your house is now fixed. And if you go to Facebook and look for mold support groups, you'll find people who've spent tens of thousands of dollars having their homes ripped up that way and still say they can't live in their home. And the reason why is that approach ignores the fact that if you've got mold in part of your house, you have a moldy house because the mold toxins are distributed everywhere by your HVAC system, by human traffic, etc. In the same way as if you were frying bacon in the kitchen, you can smell it all over the house.
Right.
And mold toxins are just itty bitty little amino acids you can't see with a microscope, and they contaminate furniture, appliances, the whole enchilada. Pure maintenance, what we do, it's a patented dry fogging process where we're actually treating the entire home with a dry fog of peracetic acid. Peracetic acid is nothing more than hydrogen peroxide and vinegar or acetic acid catalytically combined into a hospital-grade sterilant. They use it to clean endoscopy tubes in hospitals. They use it in wastewater treatment plants. It destroys all microorganisms and denatures or destroys their toxins. And so basically putting this dry fog in the house, pumping it in under pressure, basically filling every nook, cranny, and crevice of the house, pushes these sterilizing vapors everywhere and detoxifies everything. So in my family, we would have saved about $20,000 in appliances and furniture alone that we threw out that we could have kept because we didn't know how to detoxify it.
Right.
And so and what's different with it compared to some other technologies, there are other people who say, well, we fog. And then I'll look at it and there's two dimensions. There's physics and there's chemistry. So what chemistry are they using? Many times you're using things like grape seed extract and things like grapefruit seed extract, other things. The chemistry is not necessarily all that impressive. Or the physics. So like the chemistry, peracetic acid is like a godsend.
Yes.
It destroys all microorganisms and destroys the toxins. For example, my family's so sensitive that if people at church give us some hand-me-down winter coats for my grandchildren, for example, that look perfectly clean, no mold on them, but if they've been in a moldy environment like a school or something like that, they'll be contaminated. I'll bring those items home. My family members have physical reactions to them, nausea, headache, all this kind of stuff. If I take them with me, those items, to the next house I fog and just throw them out on the floor and I'm fogging, I bring them home. They're absolutely fine. They've been detoxified.
That is amazing.
That's the chemistry. The physics of it, though, some other people I've seen that fog, I've watched their videos and they'll have like a handheld fogger of some kind, like it's like a big leaf blower or a tabletop device or these things called silver bullets, etc. And what these things are doing, they're generating a fog, but one, they're not generating a fog with the same minute micron particle size that the pure maintenance fog heads do. And two, and this is the biggie, they're not creating positive pressure. In other words, if I go into a house and I take a leaf blower, I can stir up the air, but I've not added a cubic centimeter of air to that space.
Right.
My process, I've got 4 air compressors in the van, and I'm pumping in air into the house with this dry fog, so that I'm adding, several CFMs of air into that space, creating positive pressure that's forcing the vapors into every crevice. So that, for example, I take test strips that turn black in the presence of peracetic acid vapors, and I put them inside microwave ovens before I begin and shut the door. When I'm done, I open the door and they're black. The vapors are being pushed everywhere. So it's the chemistry and the physics. And the beautiful thing about it is, with peracetic acid being made of hydrogen peroxide and vinegar, it rapidly degrades into water, carbon dioxide, and oxygen. So when I'm done, there's nothing even remotely toxic left behind. It's perfectly green. There'll just be a slight vinegary smell, which is literally what you're smelling. People say it just smells fresh, and that dissipates too, over the next several hours. But that's also why it's critical that we identify first, why do you have mold?
Right.
Because the treatment doesn't leave anything toxic behind. You don't want any poisons on your wall.
Right.
But we want to make sure that when we do treat it, we're done with this.
So I want to simplify this just a little bit, and it's not a simple subject, but one of the first things that a homeowner does, and they think when they see mold, let's say in the bathtub area, they go grab bleach.
Yeah.
And they add it to water, and then the water, so the bleach will tends the mold, but the water turns around and feeds the mold. So that's what we're talking about when we say science, that's not a good way to do it. And then the other is the penetration. So if you're not adding negative air, positive air pressure, he's saying that, this thing can get into behind the walls, maybe cracks, crevices. If you don't add that pressure to it, you don't get the penetration like his system does, which is huge, because we have a silver bullet that he's talking about. So if there's places in a mold crawl space that we can't mold, or in addition to a soda blast, and we might fog it and spray it just to make sure we kind of hit everything and get it back. But at the end of the day, it's the same thing. I guess the stack effect that brings that into the air, it's the same science in a positive way that brings that mold control into all the places that you can't necessarily see.
Yeah. When we take something like a silver bullet, things like that, I cannot say that those approaches are worthless,
right?
Because there's some going in, but it's not the same animal as when I'm pumping in positive pressure. It's like comparing a hand grenade to a nuclear bomb,
right?
And so when I fog a crawl space,
right,
every crevice, that vapor is packed into everything. And then we'll also fog the HVAC system. The whole goal is to open every door and drawer in the house. The whole goal is to expose everything to these vapors.
So imagine an HVAC guy. Well, the best thing to do is just replace it, instead of paying remediation fees or air seal it or whatever. So I went to a job that Bruce was on one day, and I was very impressed. So we've got these air systems in his van. He's got these wires running to the front door, which is where I met him. That's the room that he was treating with the staircase. And I was shocked how much pressure and how much he was putting that have the chemical and stuff. I was just very impressed. It was very it looks like it's very effective. You're like, man, if it makes it through this,
it's intense.
It's yes. So very professional service, very adequate. You will know that your house is being treated, and I think that you got the best shot. And so Schaefer oil, you sell oil on the side. So Bruce is a man of many talents. So what I'm going to paint the picture here, that his motivation for doing this was not the income. In fact, that might not be a very small part.
It cost me money.
Yes. He already has income. He sells Schaefer oil, which is a neat oil. If you don't know about that, he's a sales rep doing that. This business in some cases might take away from that business in different times of the year, but he wants to help you. And so I just think the integrity that comes with that is like, he's the mold ranger, that's just fantastic that his family was so affected by this that he's wanting to get the word out. And I believe in the future there are going to be more and more instances of this, like maybe like autism wasn't a big deal 25 years ago, but today it's a big deal. I think Pure Air Solutions is going to be more and more and more important as we go on and try to tighten up these homes and systems and businesses, and universities. It just goes on and on and on. So
I'm not going to say that mold is the root of every illness,
right?
But there's a lot of things going on in a lot of people's lives that they don't realize many times has a mold dimension,
Right.
and it's a piece of the puzzle.
Right.
And oftentimes, unfortunately, this is true. Oftentimes, just general practitioners, common medical doctors, aren't very much help on this subject because it's not on their radar screen. And there's a lot of reasons for that, because there's not the empirical studies that give them the numbers, like this species of mold, this level of exposure, this person, because there are ethical implications of putting people in moldy buildings to study them.
Right.
You know, and so there's not a lot of those numbers a lot of doctors want. And so a lot of medical doctors, and I'm not knocking them, there are a lot of them that this is not on the radar screen. And so the person's presenting for things like anxiety, etc. So here, have some Lexapro, or have an antidepressant or an anti-anxiety drug, and they're just treating the symptom. So a lot of times you have to go to naturopaths and others who many times some of their approaches are a little flaky sometimes,
Right.
but they at least understand that no, mold is real. And there are some good medical doctors out there who I know of that actually do take mold seriously. And a lot of them many times are people who were just in the typical establishment, and then something happened in their family, and all of a sudden they realize how serious this is, and now they're focusing on this.
So when he said that, the word that popped into my mind is like microclimate. So I've got a bush in my front yard that doesn't grow very well anymore because it's a sun plant and I have full grown trees, but it was sunny when I planted the bush. So my point is maybe something in their environment changed. Now they're getting water in their crawl space. So, and we don't know those things. So, and this is an opinion. I don't claim to be a medical professional, but I think I have read that in some cases, men's bodies can shed toxins a little more effectively than a female's body. And so it may have to do with age. Maybe you're 20 years older now, and maybe your body can't shed those systems. And things just change. You ever heard of somebody having an allergy that just showed up all of a sudden? Like we have like ticks and Lyme disease that are showing up. And so things change. So
well, that's why I'm going to say this to you, Shaun, because you just mentioned that you have reactions to yellow mold and crawl spaces.
Right.
That's why you should wear a respirator. Right. The guys I know work in crawl spaces sometimes, I can't tell you how many of them I've talked to and say, well, it doesn't affect me.
Right.
It's not affecting you now.
Right.
But what happens with mold and other toxicities, your body's like a bucket. And eventually when that bucket gets full and tips, your body may get mad at you and not forgive you. And you develop what's called chronic inflammatory response syndrome. That's why if I come to your house and do a mold inspection, you may think I'm goofy, but I'm wearing a Tyvek suit and a cartridge respirator, and I'm shedding the Tyvek suit when I get out, because if there's a possibility that there's mold, I have to limit my exposure, because repeated exposures is what does the problem. And if I don't do that and the house was moldy and I go home that night, my wife, Gloria, will beat me, because at 8 o'clock, she'll know it. Because earlier, because what will happen to me if I call it getting molded. If I get molded, and I go home about 8 o'clock at night or so, the world starts ending. I start getting emotionally fragile. I start getting these anxieties. I'll wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning staring at the ceiling with crazy anxieties. And I know I just got molded. It'll last about 24, 36 hours for me.
Wow.
But if I keep doing that, but that's also a warning signal. It's like, hey, keep getting exposed. You're going to get seriously ill.
So let me paint a picture of what he said. So I got stung by hornets. I've been stung like 4 times, a few times each time. And I've heard that venom kind of stays in your bloodstream forever. So my tolerance when I get stung now is not near what it used to be back in the day. Poison ivy is the opposite. I can take a little more poison ivy now. Some of it's knowledge, because I know not to scratch it, and I cut my fingernails real short. But the thing is, I have those levels in my blood system, and they stay there almost forever. So I just got stung the other day. I have a well house out here that had hornets in it, and I got stung. So I got stung twice, and it did not affect me this time, but I was very worried, because the last time I got stung, I had to go to the emergency room, because I did what you said. My mind's raging, my blood pressure shot up, and maybe it was a different kind of hornet. So same thing with this mold. You don't know, because there's so many different kinds and there's so many different areas. But true story. If you use like a hair dye, maybe, and let's say you have a gray beard and you want to have a brown beard, some people are extremely sensitive to those chemicals and those products. So all this stuff plays in your bloodstream. It affects you in ways that maybe you've not noticed.
And you can develop those sensitivities. You may not be sensitive at first, but your sensitivity increases. In fact, we see this happening with mold. If someone's been sick with mold, they've had, they call it mycoses, mold-related diseases. If they've been sick with some form of mycoses, a mold-related illness, what will often happen to them if the house is the source of their exposure, okay, until they fix their house, they can't heal, because you can't heal in the environment that's making you sick, because healing from mold is a process of detoxification. But if you're being retoxed every time you're in the house, it's a vicious cycle. Okay, so once your house is fixed though, and your body's able to start detoxing, sometimes with interventions like bentonite clay and charcoal, etc., but you start detoxing, people will experience something that we call getting unmasked. In other words, after they start healing, all of a sudden, when they go into places that they used to go into that they're fine with, like an antique store or a used bookstore someplace else, or a restaurant they used to go to, their body will scream at them. They'll get a reaction of some kind, because the antenna of their body's up saying, I don't want to go through this again. And before, that didn't happen to them because they felt sick all the time. They felt crummy all the time. And then once they start getting healed and they're feeling better,
right,
then when they go into a place that's moldy, their body shouts at them.
Right.
We've seen this in the family.
And then you understand yourself, your body, your reactions.
You've become highly sensitized. And that's why mold-related illnesses are kind of life-changing, because as you develop that sensitivity and that sensitivity gets even increased or intensified. I treated a house for a young woman one time who was a wonderful young woman. She was a hospice nurse. So she traveled to homes, and she said she goes into houses that make her sick, and she was mold sensitive, and her hobby is collecting antiques. I told her, well, regarding your profession, you maybe ought to look into getting a nursing job in a hospital,
right,
because you're telling me you're going to houses that are making you sick. And then secondly, you need a new hobby. I said, because you're going into places that have, that nice old book smell.
Right.
That's musty smell. That's called mold.
Right. So there's an estate sale, and all these books have been sitting down in the basement, and they got a little bit of mold between the pages. You know how old books do. And so enough of those. So you never know. So that is amazing. It's so when we talk about mold, I like what he said earlier. They're not hypochondriacs. They're just very aware. And when you don't know, you don't know. Maybe I have a lot of allergies. Well, some parents treat their kids like, well, you don't have permission to have allergies. You just have a runny nose. You're still going to school and whatnot. But then when your family's affected like this, that raises that radar and kind of changes those circumstances, kind of changes that platform. Yeah. So if you have a mold problem, Bruce and I, from an integrity standpoint, will do everything we can to help you solve recommend solution, recommend course of action, and we're with you to the end, because we would love to contribute to you feeling better, doing better, being more active, and less sick and less reactive. So the solution and then being proactive. So after we've done this, what are some of the things? Is there anything in particular that we can focus on as a homeowner and say, okay, now I've got an encapsulation. I've had my home treated with mold. What can I do to make sure that... Okay.
It's all, what I do is I've put together like a 4-page, up to 4 or 5 pages now, follow-up tips. Just a mold. I give it to anybody who wants it, for free. It's a working document. I keep adding things to, right, about how to keep your house, mold free. Bottom line, it boils down to moisture control. Right. Don't let leaks go on. Inspect areas of your home that are typical mold sources occasionally. Like look underneath your kitchen sink. Look for drips and stuff like that, right, leaky things like this. Know what's going on in your crawl space. Most of all, control humidity. The EPA says that you must keep relative humidity below 60% to prevent mold growth, and that ideally 30 to 50. So I tell people to shoot for 50. And in my house, I have a whole house dehumidifier. I set it at like 47, 48 because I don't trust the gauges completely. Right. And there's air, different corners of the house. So my goal is to make sure it's always at 50% or less. Right. And in my experience in the Southeast, keeping your home at 50% relative humidity doesn't occur by accident. Right. 6 months out of the year, that's an intentional activity. Every basement, I haven't met a basement yet that doesn't require a dehumidifier. Most homes require some supplemental dehumidification in the living space. Right. If the ideal and most hands-free, beautiful way is a whole house dehumidifier that works through the HVAC system because it distributes the air to the whole house. That'll easily set you back $4,000 or $5,000. If that's cost prohibitive, then just standalone dehumidifiers that will, remove at least 50 pints per day.
Right.
There's a whole class of dehumidifiers out there right now that are pretty worthless, in my opinion, that people are buying on Amazon for 75, 85 bucks. They're called Peltier or semiconductor ones. They remove like a liter of water per day.
Right.
You need something to remove.
They catch on fire too, because they're not made to do your whole house. They're made to do a room.
So you do like, when they say, oh, it does 1,000 square feet, that's worthless. 1,000 square feet in Arizona or in Kentucky. You want to look at the pints.
Right.
Does it handle 50 to 70 pints per day capacity? And so you need some dehumidifiers in the house with good air movement. And so that's the main key, is controlling humidity.
We start out with 100. I feel like even though you only need a 6-cylinder, 4-cylinder, we're going to put in an 8-cylinder because that's how we roll. So
that's in the crawl space.
In the crawl space. Yeah. So, and I guess as a contractor, we tend to try to over-engineer things, especially if we're working on our house. So the point that pops into my head is I wear hearing aids. And so sometimes I have to get these things adjusted, and because I don't know what I'm not hearing until I visit the doctor and he makes the adjustment. So what in the mold world, you don't know that you're sensitive to these symptoms until they're addressed and solved and cured. And then you're like, oh my gosh, I feel so much better when I get up in the morning. And it's not because I have a foam mattress. It's because I had the mold treated under my house, in my house. And you don't know what you're feeling sometimes. You don't know what the normal is until you inspect these things and address these things. And so it's...
And I want to add one more thing about the tips about what you can do after your house is treated. Controlling moisture,
right,
but also HVAC system maintenance. HVAC systems can rapidly become a mold factory.
Yes.
In your air handler, the air handler of your HVAC system has a condenser coil.
Yes.
And by design, it gets wet. When it's cooling the air, it's pulling out condensation and it's getting wet and going to a condensate pump, draining out of the house. If you don't use a good quality air filter, that to stop the dust and particles from reaching that damp, wet condenser coil, that dust will start forming a nice mold growing paste on those condenser coils.
So true.
And if you've ever looked at the back of a window AC unit, and you'll see on the grill work this black stuff between the fins. That's what I'm talking about. And so next thing, your house has got a mold factory right there. And so I have my HVACs. Everybody should have their system professionally inspected at least once a year. I do mine twice a year, and I have them look at the condenser coils. Take off the panel, look at the condenser coils. And if they're not clean, physically have them cleaned. I use high quality, pleated MERV 10 air filters, and I have a standalone units in my house called Air Doctor Pros. And for the past 5 years, my new HVAC system, every time they've inspected the coils, they look factory new. And so, and that's not just good for energy efficiency, but it's to keep the house healthy. Because if, for example, you've got dirty coils, even if I treat the house and I sterilize them that day, they'll be sterilized that day. But if the dirt is still on those coils, when it starts getting wet again and new spores come in from outside, you'll start the process all over again.
Still have a problem.
And so HVAC system maintenance is we love the comfort of the air conditioning. That's great.
Right.
But you got to maintain the system.
So we had a job project that we went to work on, and long story short, she kept the HVAC on all the time. And so I encouraged her to use the auto button. Now, I'm not a doctor, but if that system starts to create this dirt, like he's talking about in the coil, it never dries out. It can never go away. So we had a problem because she ran her air conditioning so cold in her house. I think she left it on 64 degrees, and it was just, anyway, maybe that system needs to cut on and off on the auto, instead of having, and some people, they have a different opinion. They want to run the fan all the time to circulate all this stuff. So I get it, but I do like what you said about the air filters. Big, big, big deal. My wife has made me super religious on changing this thing every single month, and we pay good money for good filters, and we don't have a lot of dust in our house. That's one thing with her. And then the number two, pulling out these allergens and mold and mildew and whatever it is to try to control that.
I've seen, you've probably seen them too, these cheapo air filters that are one-dimensional, this little meshy thing that you and I can have a conversation through and see each other.
Right.
Those are good for stopping leads and twigs.
Right.
And some people say, well, it's easier in the system. Well, if your system can't handle a real filter, get another system, because a pleated one has more surface area, and if you get a MERV 10, it's going to stop mold. It's going to stop mold spores, allergens, etc. The whole goal is to keep that coil clean. You go much higher than MERV 10, you might have a little strain in the system, but
Right.
also we have MERV 8, MERV 10. That's an efficiency rating. Also, don't leave it to guesswork. Put a humidity gauge on every level of your house. If you have a 2-story house with a basement, you need at least 3 humidity gauges, one on every level, so you know what it is. There's a brand called Thermopro.
Yes.
Thermopro, little white ones, are about $15 on Amazon.
Very affordable.
I have calibrated several of them using salt packets. I have found the Thermopro brand to be, reasonably accurate, within 2 to 3% plus or minus, which is really good for a humidity gauge. But I've seen some others that are way off. I've calibrated them, but get yourself a Thermopro and have one at every level. And if that humidity is getting much above 50%, you need to take some action.
We have got great information here today. If somebody wants to dig in, Bruce, a little bit more and learn, they can go to your website.
Yes.
There's a book that he shared with me. Would that be an option? Maybe.
Yes.
Okay. What's the name of this book?
The book is Breaking the Mold by Mike Adams. He's the founder of Pure Maintenance. And if someone wants to go to my website, pureairsolutionsky.com, pureairsolutionsky.com, they can contact me through that. They can contact me. They can Google mold remediation Bowling Green. You'll see Pure Air Solutions up there, and that my contact information. And I gladly give free phone consultations, to talk to them to see if there's, if it's something we need to look at. And I can give them, I'll gladly send them the PDFs I put together for just informational purposes. I want people to have the information whether they use my services or not.
You can call it, yes. So education, information. We will also provide his contact information if you're in a situation where you feel like the mold may be affecting your quality of life, or the air that you're breathing may not be what it ought to be. Let us know. We'll get you in touch with Bruce. We'll do everything we can to help you and make a full permanent solution so that we can solve the issue, make you feel better, live your life better, have a better quality of life. And they don't come much better than Bruce Sullivan. Integrity, honesty, and just have the mission to make the world a better place and inform them with challenges that may not be on a lot of people's radar. So we appreciate you, Bruce, for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
And we want to
appreciate
help
what you do
any way we can. And he's so intelligent of an individual, and I just think what you're doing here is just so great. And so we wanted to feature you here and get under the surface and see who you are and what you do. And we're going to bring him back sometime here in the future, and we may cover a little more different topics, and let's just see how things progress. And again, Bruce Sullivan, the owner of Pure Air Solutions. If you want to get in touch with them online, pureairsolutionsky.com. Worth every second of your time just to learn a little bit and to hear his story. And thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you again next time.